The rules about how this reality works are subject to change. When you don't know what the rules are, I assure you, you will still feel them change. Becoming aware, first and foremost, is like learning to read the weather. You might not be able to stop the rain, but you can find shelter or learn to love it. We have been given the opportunity to create reality without the influence of a wide range of divine guidance, without the intermediaries. Gaia has left us alone with her weather. Essentially, from a cosmic perspective, divine beings, once known as gods, angels, basically closed their eyes. They turned away. They stopped seeing us. And we were granted the opportunity to make our own decisions, to interpret our own reality, and to act on these interpretations. Now, the sad truth is that we're not very good at it. In fact, we're awful at it. From a cosmic perspective, the way we treat each other is appalling. And that's why I'm burning cedar. The devastating violations we place upon each other simply in how we think about each other are beyond measure. Because under a wide range of circumstances, nobody treats anybody else like this. One of the most fundamental elements of this mistake is blame. When you experience your reality as if you have nothing to do with creating your reality, you have a lot less to do with creating your reality. On a certain level, when you experience a storm, it probably doesn't occur to you to get mad, say, this isn't fair. On a certain level, when you experience a storm, the first question is, how am I going to be safe? Now, some people might be less rational than others. Some people are going to, weather out a hurricane and stay in a place where maybe their house won't survive. But nonetheless, probably doesn't occur to them that they can stop the hurricane. The thing is, from a cosmic perspective, you can. Welcome. Trevor, Angie, Jean, Xander, Anthony, I'm so glad you're here. Tom, good morning. Good morning to all of you. I am a little bit sick today. Got a bit of cold. I'm burning off something. As many of you know, when I get sick, I try to trust it. I trust that something is being processed out. I work with it as best I can. If I was going into an office, I would not go into work today. But I trust you will not be able to catch it. In the process, please be patient, because today is important and I didn't want to miss it. Kadia, Grand Rising from you. I love Canada. And I genuinely believe it impacts the viewership of this channel because a lot of you are from Canada. I've been working all week with how to do these. I'm going to invite you to focus in on your heart and breathe in a rhythm that feels good here. The goal is to feel more deeply in your heart. As you begin to, it becomes easier because your focus is easier to maintain. So the initial effort is not something that goes on forever. By building a little fire with your attention and focus, you make something that's easier to focus on. If you have not yet experienced this, you are not practicing enough. And I encourage you to breathe into your heart and feel the impact that you have. Revelation is very simple. Our thoughts become less important, and the reality becomes more important. I know so much about this because it is my reality. Yesterday, my son, who's almost 7, came to me and he said, "Daddy, maybe it's like you traded your vision for your chakra vision." He now asks me for chakra check-ins in the morning. So I tell him what chakras in him are most active and what I see happening. And he really takes it to heart. I see energy. When I see energy, to me, it's a relatively objective process. I don't judge. I just see. If there's a congestion in my throat, which there is at the moment, I see it. I recognize it from within as a vibrational truth. From there are many different ways I can do something about that. But immediately suggesting that it's someone else's fault that this is happening to me is one of the least powerful steps I could take. Now, one of the reasons this is so obvious is because this is my energy. And because I'm thinking in relationship to energy, it's a lot easier for me to stay centered in this non-judgmental, what am I going to do? This is what's happening. What am I going to do? When you use your mind first to generate some kind of paradigm through which you interpret reality and then compare reality to that paradigm and act typically to try to get things to conform to the paradigm that you believe should be real, you are very disempowered. But this is most of human history. People have come up with different ways of being. They've put a mental framework around it. Undoubtedly, it has something to do with the real world, but they put a mental framework around their way of being. It often gets written down. And then they measure reality in relationship to this. I don't think it's been particularly effective. It has some uses. As best I can tell, the 10 commandments are pretty good. They're don'ts. Almost entirely do not. Do not. Except for honor thy father and mother and observe the Sabbath, right? Don't do these things. These are good things not to do. But they're still don'ts. The mind is not great at making rules about positive in a world such as ours. Largely because a formula does not work very well with this world. Now, it has some uses. It's good to bring love and compassion into almost everything. But how to apply that, what that looks like, is going to change so much in relationship to any given circumstance that it's simply not the most effective place to begin. Now, breathe into your heart is. I get a feeling when I say it, I actually get a degree of an overview of everyone who's listening. Typically, I even sense that I'm feeling the influence of people who will listen in the future who have not yet listened. It's kind of cool. And in that sense, I always get a little like, yeah, 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 I know I should be breathing into my heart. Sort of like that energy, right? I don't think you get it. This is you. It is stunningly and even terrifyingly difficult to comprehend how far from reality we are when we live in a logical paradigm as a fundamental foundation of our reality. And so the first step you need to take is to get into yourself. Who are you? I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you scroll through YouTube, particularly if you're doing shorts on your phone, you can end up paying so much attention to what you're seeing that you're not in yourself, like, at all. And so somebody can say, I have a positive over here. I have a positive thing. Or I just not even a positive. I have a strong energy, right? That's what they're doing. They're saying, I have a strong energy. And they can get you to focus on that energy, kind of the point, right? And you make it stronger. You do. You're buying into their game. And while you're buying in, you get to feel it together. It's a terrible investment in many cases. I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's a terrible investment in many cases. What you need to be able to do is say, how do you feel while you're watching that? Now, this might be confusing, right? But your attention can focus on someone else and you can feel what they're feeling. You kind of feel it. That's what you might think you are in that moment, but it's not you. The simplest measure of who are you is use the 3D reality, use your body and spatial awareness, breathe in your heart and see what your heart is feeling during that moment when you pay attention to this other being. When you do that, you get a much clearer read on the actual impact you're having on your presence. And it's energetic. When you use your mind to understand the energetic dynamics you're in, something begins to happen. You begin to get exposed to the ability not just to feel your own energy, but to see energy patterns around you. The more you focus on those energy patterns, the more you're interacting with them and the more you'll feel them. So it's self-referential. This is where to begin. This really is revelation. The revelation is to see what is real. Now, I know from afar, from reading through the book, from listening to other people talk about this, the first thing that happens is people will give a certain like aura to the situation. It might be a little difficult to think that some me with a cold can be telling you some of the deepest truth in this world. And I am. This is a time where the truth of who is creating what begins to be revealed. If I create a fight in my head, I create it in my head. I think about it. I don't like you. I think about that, you. Now I've created this fight in my head. So when I'm creating it, I'm the one creating it. I'm thinking of another person, but I am creating it. I am scripting this thing, and I'm going to hit them and they're going to hit me. And I do this a lot. I like them. So I think about this a lot. And at a certain point, I approach them and I give them this fight. I made it and then I give it to them. And in the process of giving it to them, I'm saying, I'm acting as if it's them. I'm acting as if this is who they are because I've been thinking about them the whole time. I see them, all sorts of confirmation bias goes through the roof. Boom, 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 boom. If for whatever reason they can't say no, they will then live into what I've created. So if you measure real world events, if you look at the world as we see actions in the physical body, you will see one story. If you look at the world through the lens of your mind, interpreting the actions in the physical body, which is what's most common, you will see yet another story. And neither of them will be real, because neither of them are in the essence. Let's keep this cool. Let's keep this present with what we can all access. Abraham talks about getting ahead of it. There is no greater lesson to explore. I keep getting more traction. I don't like that statement. This is a wonderful lesson to keep exploring, because I keep getting incredible traction out of it. I keep noticing the ways in which we have these opportunities to get ahead of our reality, get ahead of the physical world expression, how the experience is expressed, by tuning into the forces that are most influential in creating this experience. When you get good at that, you're naturally attuned to doing it more and more. So your attention will gravitate into these channels where you can influence things more than any other situation. This is revelation, to reveal to the world the roots of our reality, is to allow us the influence to change things much more than we could otherwise. Why isn't this happening already? Well, the first lesson is the quickening. And if you haven't focused on this lesson in the different videos that have addressed it, particularly the initial channeling from Thoth, quickening, I encourage you to. It's crucial. What this basically says is, during this time, when we gain more influence, we have to be the kinds of beings who are committed to not generating hatred, who are committed to not thinking that fear is an external experience, meaning fear is the coyote that approaches me rather than my reaction to the coyote approaching me. Fear is something that happens when a burglar comes to the door, rather than fear is the accumulation of the 20 times that I've imagined that happening when it didn't happen, which actually ends up investing in it really happening. The quickening suggests that if you keep imagining something, it's going to become more real. Its chances of becoming more real are much higher. So you must be someone who has the discipline not to imagine a certain range of things. Now, is it possible to just turn things off like that? Well, yes, eventually. But first standard is something simpler. It just means when you think it, you remember that it's your responsibility to change this. So no, you can't just stop yourself from being afraid of things you're afraid of, but you can commit that when it happens, you don't turn around and start blaming. You don't start railing against the kind of person you're afraid of. You don't start buying a gun to deal with the coyotes even. You interpret this as your responsibility. I am reacting to a force that's deeper than my awareness. In my reaction, I've lost my agency. I've lost my power to make my own decisions because I'm on autopilot. I'm just having a consistent reaction to this thing. Over the course of time, the accumulation of multiple consistent reactions that are negative is that I've generated something negative. And now it has some heft because I've done it over and over again. What's this going to do? It's going to influence external reality. Now, one of the main things that actually happens is that people they get cut off. They're less powerful. In order to prevent you from manifesting a robber at your door or a coyote attacking you when you walk to take out the trash, you lose your power in multiple ways. You don't get your dreams. You don't get to go on vacation. Things don't go right for you because you have to detach from power in order to be present enough to just keep going on in the face of your fears. What's the solution? Take responsibility for everything you think and feel. It doesn't mean that it's your fault. It means take responsibility for it. Learn how you can react differently to any situation that you're a part of, particularly the things you stew on again and again and again. Now, this is one of the cornerstones of understanding what's about to happen, because what's about to happen is already happening. What's about to happen is ahead of us, right? And if we think of what's about to happen as the external real world events, the human interactions, the material plane bouncing into things, bouncing into each other, getting in the car, walking down the street. But if I'm going to walk down the street, before I do that, in almost every circumstance, I'm going to have some degree of choice. And before I do that, there are energies that are making me anxious because I'm inside too much. It's being present with this internal anxiety. This internal anxiety is actually not anxiety. It's a contrast in forces. It's actually a desire and my inhibition against that desire. If I have a plan to sit at the computer and my internal resolve, my internal drive is to like move and feel the air, that's where reality begins. Now, at the moment, we pathologize this. At the moment, we are in the Western world, certainly in the upper middle class, go to the doctor for every fucking problem you have world. We pathologize this. How are we pathologizing it? We are deciding that people should live a certain way. Kids are supposed to go to school all day. Adults are supposed to go to the office all day. All these people have a framework and they're trying to conform to that framework and it's not working. And so when they start to suffer, the initial interpretation is they're sick. People aren't questioning the structure. They're not questioning the structure nearly quickly enough. But the structure is the problem. I'm telling you, the structure is the problem. Anxiety is not anxiety. There's nothing intrinsically wrong. In fact, there's something very right about the drive that is inducing what we know of as anxiety. It's an inner drive to change the system. Now, it doesn't have to be as simple as this inner drive always gets its way. You might have to negotiate with it. But in the world many people are coping with, there's no negotiation. You're not going to get up and go outside. You've got to go to school, period. And when you can't maintain your attention in school, you're sick. You have a deficit of attention to the structure you've been told is the only way you can live. Interesting. Why is this the same? This is the same as religion. This is the same as religion. You're being given a structure through which to interpret your reality. And when things don't go right, it's flipping back on you like, what about you is sick? Now, this is very different than saying, take responsibility for the way in which you experience your reality. Because when you take responsibility for the feelings that you're having, you immediately question everything, including the structure. That's all you have to do at first, is be willing to question. When you come from this space of questioning, and you really ask yourself very honestly, is there anything that I'm unwilling to question? When you come from this ability to reflect, you begin to see into the roots of how reality is being generated. And you watch forces within yourself try to give birth that are getting destroyed. In an era in which you begin to see these forces, you are seeing what's real. And then you use your mind to help you navigate how to respond in a healthy way, in a good way, to the forces that are real. You're treating the forces within you, within your own body, like the rain. Rather than railing against the rain, you ask the question, what can I do? Now, we began with the premise, with the gift, that this indeed is something you can change. You can change some of the greatest storms. But in order to do that, you have to understand who you are. Who you are in this body is the being that's been invited to be in this body. Your greatest access to the weather in the world is right here. Many people feel pressure changes in the weather. Many people are deeply affected by these changes. Let it affect you. Be with this impact. It's one of the first ways you begin to tune in to what's actual, what is act. what is acting in the world. Now, in this depth, we gain something it needs to be quite disturbing at first. There's all sorts of in-betweens. There is a definite truth to what is generated within me and what is generated somewhere else. Now, we're talking about this one layer of spiritual energy, people often call it's the distinction, it's the relationship between prana and apana. Apana is known as the energy in the air, and prana is what happens when it's in your body. So it does change form, but there's a relationship between these forces. And this is what we're talking about here, this layer of reality. This is where the chakras influence so greatly. When we're watching here, when we're focusing our focus of our attention on this range of presence, we're gaining a lot more influence over what's real. And there's this definite impact of a sense of like the weather of the world. Once you start noticing it, you start to find this very stark, it could be an extremely stark distinction between an energy that's coming at you externally on this plane, what we know of is the physical plane. We're measuring prana and apana. We're measuring energy in this way, but it's in relationship to things. Okay, we're not doing a like all of reality is oneness yet. We're just paying attention to this and adding the dimension of spiritual awareness. When you do this, you can have feelings, you can have thoughts, you can have visions in your mind's eye that are directed at you. And when they were not generated within you, but they are directed at you, and you are drawn to keep your focus there, you have been forced to become what you're expected to be, what you're told to be, and what you are seen to be. Now, it needs to be disturbing. You may know yourself as someone. You may know yourself based in feelings that are familiar to you and have long been familiar to you, and they're not really yours. They've become yours because you've been forced to invest in them, but I invite you to trust that on the level of truth that your soul unites with your spirit in your heart, they are not yours. This is scary because it involves a threshold. And at this threshold, we talk about it in many different ways, but at this threshold, there's a faith that you need to embrace, and it's the only way to progress. And what you're saying is, on a daily basis, I will begin with what is here. Everything that happens to me, I will take responsibility for. Everything that happens to me. Now, why? This might sound contradictory. It isn't. Everything that happens to me is function in relationship to ways in which I call it. So if I've been taught to know myself in a certain way, I will reinforce that even if no one else is doing it. It is my responsibility alone to say no to that, to change it. Nobody else can do it for me. People have a tendency to think that someone else should fix it. Because if the problem was that my daddy and mommy saw me in a certain way, and I lived into that way, but I don't really want that way now, well, I have to replace daddy and mommy so they can see me in a different way, and then I can gravitate to their way. That's exactly what you can't do. See, first of all, notice that's a metaphor of a child. And it usually translates. It translates from your parents see you in one way, you live into that, then you go into the world and the community, the institutions you become a part of see you in a way. And you live into that. So yes, there is some value in thinking of, well, I want to put myself in an environment where I'm seen differently. But that can't be the answer, because the resolve to get to that environment, the resolve to change where you are, has to come from an inner sense of knowing yourself. that says this is not right. There's something much better for me. And that must come from here. So let's do this again. Heart. When I say I want my soul and my spirit to unite in my heart, I'm saying I want the presence of me that preceded coming to the earth, really, solar energy, energy from the sun, and energy from the earth to unite in my heart. Energy from the sun coming down, energy from the earth coming up, uniting in my heart. This is where I begin. And then I breathe. I know when you're not doing that. Revelation. I know when a community of people is not doing that. Revelation. I know who starts the fight. Revelation. I know when someone else wants to fight. Revelation. I see these things. It's the way of being that I asked to be. Little batshit of me, quite frankly, but that's what I did. And wow.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, Siri, I do. It's worth it to see reality as it is, but it dissolves everything that you put in the way of knowing the truth about yourself. That's the deal. In the act of liberating yourself from false understandings, in the act of liberating yourself from unhealthy perceptions and ways of being you are seen through, you have to embrace anything that you might not like about you. You have to embrace mistakes you've made that you're trying to cover up. I yell at someone and I tell them that it's their fault. I wouldn't have had to yell at them if they didn't do this thing that annoyed me. One of the most glaring examples of this, Mike Brown. Mike Brown was this guy who got shot. He had dark skin. He got shot when he approached a man with a gun and a uniform in the United States. One of, many. When the officer who was responsible, when the guy who killed him was interviewed, he said he saw a demon. He saw a demon in him as he approached. And it's one of the most heart-wrenching and important statements that I've heard in the past decade. It was about 10 years ago. How does he know that he saw a demon? How does he know that he saw a demon? How does he know that what he was seeing wasn't a projection? How does he know that he wasn't just seeing grumpy or a bad day and he projected on that demon? In fact, I'm sure he was projecting on that demon. And I have to wonder what kind of objectivity can measure what he was seeing. See, the irony of this is what we see is not always real. What we see is not always real because when we reinforce a way of thinking over and over and over and over and over again, it affects how we see. This is crucial to the human condition because how we see influences reality. One of the cornerstones of attracting what you want in your life is to learn how to see it in your mind's eye. Before people learn this lesson, it's not like the power is on autopilot. The power is going haywire. The power is here trying to assert itself through whatever we do, through whatever we think. So when we maintain a bias against any person or group of people, we're going to be manifesting what we think. It's called confirmation bias. Doesn't sound as exciting that way, but it's the roots of magic power. If we think that a certain group of people with a certain color of skin or a certain religious practice are something, we are far more likely to meet people who will reinforce that belief. And when we don't, we'll overlook it because we've prepared ourselves to overlook it. And when we do, we'll say, see, I was right. And at the end of the day, this guy got shot. This guy got shot. There is a presence to the way we think. And the presence in the way we think is based typically on community patterns. So you might not call it a religion, but you inherit a shared experience along with the people you grow up with. And in this shared experience, you might differ in one way or another. You join the band and they join the art club and they join the sports team or whatever, but you're still all part of something together. This togetherness has a presence, and this presence has a resonance. I'm telling you that the resonance that we've carried for a long time is no longer going to survive. And there's a very simple reason. If I can impact you based in seeing you differently, and you can impact someone else based in seeing them differently, what happens when an angel sees you? Be with this, please. What happens when an angel sees you? Here's the answer I get when I ask. I don't even know yet, because Thoth has not opened his eyes to look at me. He smirks when he teaches me this. He's been talking to me with his eyes closed on purpose. In fact, he's forced me to consciously and intentionally go to him again and again and again and basically say, hey, what do you see? What do you think? And he doesn't even open his eyes because it would impact me so deeply. And in the course of impacting me, it would take away my agency. So my agency is to choose to be seen. Get that? My agency is to choose to be seen. In choosing to be seen by divine presence, I become what they see. But it has such a tremendous impact that it outweighs anything that you could do by seeing me with less care and appreciation. It could completely rewrite my experience like that. And in many ways, it has. There's this in between. Thoth has not even opened his eyes to look at me, but his attention has gently begin to focus in on me more and more. He's seen me out of the periphery of his vision. This is the only metaphor that seems to make sense. For years and years and years. And by gently offering me more, he says, now, do you want me to look at you more now? But it hasn't always been that way. I remember the time I had basically tried to hide from him. It was too overwhelming. I wanted to be more practically involved in the world. I wanted something more tangible. I wanted something that made sense to other folks. Something that fit in. And it wasn't working. And I was at my wit's end. I came back to my hometown. I had not been living here. And I visited with a friend. And I saw him. And he did. He gave me a moment of just like, he looked at me like that. And it was like so much that I'm still with it. He chose to orient me. And the way he described it was, I was making my choices over the course of the past year I had been making my choices consistently to gravitate towards the guidance that he held for me. So, given my own independence, I was making these choices. And thus, when he looked at me, it was in many ways a manifestation of my own prayer to be seen. But I had to make it again and again and again. And that is what we're doing. This is not going to go on forever. In fact, we got a decade. We got a decade, people. And by the end of this decade, the rules will have changed significantly. That's the message I've been getting consistently for a while. And that's why I'm ready to assert it more clearly. We've got a decade. And at the end of this decade, divine presence will be witnessing people on a regular basis on such a level that the sum total of the forces in the world will be controlled by their presence, essentially. And the word control, it's not that. Shaped, herded is the image I'm getting. We will be, as a human species, the total of our ability to choose, the totality of our ability to choose will have decreased on a certain way. But the reason that's true is because we suck at it. We suck at it. We suck at it. Let me tell you, apply this. I did this because they did this. I had to hit him because he did that. What I just said, that dynamic, is at the heart of a huge range of negative, nasty, violent human behavior. What people do is they watch the other. They watch what they don't like, and they hold it tightly. Why? Because they can't control that, or so they think. And because they can't control that, they want to control that. But they have failed to realize that the initial act of control is how they see. How they see. If you don't see a world in which the table is set for the rainbow, you have made that choice. If you see a world where your color is the best and other colors are less important, there is your agency. There is your power. You've made that choice already. Now, never going to work. Never going to work. I'm telling you this, the world won't let it work. The world will not let it work. The Mongols killed 10% of the world population. They didn't last more than a couple hundred years. In fact, they fractured pretty quickly. You cannot dominate the world. You can't do it. You cannot take over the world with your color. In fact, increasingly, you can't even take over your backyard with your color. That's the message we're getting, because all of us come from cosmic light. All of us come from the light of the sun. And as we enter the earth, we've been refracted into this rainbow, and we've been invited to spend specific time within a color of this rainbow. But in the process, you forgot that's not who you are. That's just what you're wearing now. If you keep saying every day, this is who I am, 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 you've made a little bit of a mistake. Who were you 500 years ago? Maybe you were the raider who killed the people that you identify with. You identify with your genetic heritage in this body. Maybe you were the people who killed your ancestors. Maybe that was you. And the reason you incarnated in their ancestral line now is to learn to feel the other side. If you don't maintain this humility, you're lost. You don't have a prayer. All of these discussions about what's real, you have to understand There are present karmic forces in the world that operate through thousands of years, through traditions. They're present. They exist. These karmic forces are vibrating in the world. They don't go away. They exist. They die eventually, but in their time, not in ours. So these chains go back thousands of years. You go to Egypt. I've gone in my dreams. Oh, goodness. They're still dancing. They're still dancing for the old gods. They're there. They're there. Those forces are present because it's not time for them to leave. In fact, in many ways, it's time for them to return. My uncle and aunt just went to Egypt. It tapped me in a lot. They came and visited me, then they went to Egypt. It's kind of cool. It's all I need. But you aren't those forces. Who are you? See, you can identify with these roots. You can hold them, and incredible things happen when you do. But you fail to understand what you're doing when you do that. Who are you? You must relate yourself to the knowledge that 500 years ago, you may have incarnated in an entirely different culture. In fact, in a culture that you hold with disrespect or even hatred now. 1,500 years, same thing. 3,000 years, same thing. Who were you? Now, I've been invited to emphasize something, people. There is a truth that time is not as linear as we think. But I encourage you not to overdo it because it's confusing. Time is not entirely as linear as we think, but life as you know it, the experience of your consciousness has a sequential nature to it. So getting lost in a sense that all of this is happening at once could give you the false impression that you could change things that you can't change. No, the truth of the matter is, if you incarnated after the Revolutionary War in the United States of America, some of the people were the most violent. This is true of every war that's ever happened. During the war, violence has a place, right? So people's chaos monster becomes an asset. But when the war is over, they're no longer acceptable. Now they're a traumatized, aggressive person. So there's always been, what happens to those people? What happens to those most violent people? It's a subset. Most of the soldiers presumably want it to be over and get out, go back to their families and live a decent life, have nightmares, but at least make a good meal with the people they love. But some don't. In my community right here, some of the most violent soldiers were hired to go on missions further west. And they came here and they killed, they murdered the people who lived here. They burned their peach trees. And they lived based on the foundation of their orchards. So when the trees were burned, they were driven away. The people who did that, the actual human beings who did that, where did they incarnate next? I lived with the guilt of that. When I was young, my sister learned this before I did. She's younger than me. And she learned this and she taught me. And I lived with the guilt of it for decades until I met a Native American woman who looked at me. A Native American woman looked at me and said, "How do you know that you weren't one of those natives who lost their home?" I had identified with the chain through history that had done that because my genetic heritage connects. She relieved me of that trauma. But in the same breath, she invited me to stop identifying with the positives either. I could no longer be an early American. And I had been. My families came here first. My mother's family came to Jamestown. My father's family came to Plymouth. We could trace it pretty easily. And I held that. And then I learned what happened. And then I felt like shit. And then she invited me into this deeper realization. Soften your understanding of who you are. Just soften it. This is who you were born as now. We are responsible for healing the karmas of the past, but I promise you, it's a very different relationship when you wonder, when you open to the potential. At first, it's just potential. You don't even have to know. You don't even have to remember. You just open to the potential that you were incarnate in an entirely different culture. Maybe the opposite culture, maybe the culture this culture defeated, maybe on the other side of the world, maybe you were in India when that happened. Maybe you were in Greenland. Small margin of that one, but when you soften your understanding of who you are in this way, you surrender any national pride, any racial pride, any religious pride, and I really encourage you to. And then you say, oh, you gain the world. You gain the world. You don't have to dominate the world now. There's no dominance here. There's no dominance to be had. She's got it. She's got it. She's got it. She's got this. And you know what she's about to do? She's about to wake up. When Gaia sees you, she's seen through the eyes of many beings who love this place much more than we know how to, certainly from this perspective. She's seen through the eyes of many angels and guides and spirits and those who've been known as gods. I assure you, they have no egoic relationship to that concept. That is what they were when they were the only divine being that a wide range of folks trusted. When they were the only divine being that many trusted, they were known as a god. They loved each other then and now. As they awaken, they do it slowly because they are well aware of the impact they have. It goes wrong sometimes. It goes wrong. Part of maintaining our agency is that people have the right to freak out. People have the right to pull away. People have the right to misunderstand. People have the right to say, no, no, no. We are given as much agency as they can give us while reawakening the rainbow. You can pray for a rainbow before you know how. You can know yourself as a rainbow before you know how. And by doing so, you say, see me. And by asking to be seen, you learn to see. This is how I did it. Works. When you see the truth, oh goodness, so much falls away. I rarely feel the kinds of frustration, resentment, threat, fear, terror that I used to. It's just seeing. It's just seeing. I've had extraordinary instincts about where to leave and where to go. I've had extraordinary instincts that allow me to step right through confusing and terrifying situations because I saw a path through that enabled me to recognize who everybody was. I remember standing one night, downtown urban center. I've been through so many American cities. And America is pretty broad. There's a lot of success here and there's a lot of terror and poverty. And I was downtown in one of these settings and there was a large group of men with dark colored skin. And I was standing waiting for someone, but it was going to be a bit. I was early and it was night. It was dark outside. And some part of me was like, I felt okay. Overtly on the surface, like I could have been scared. But when I felt it, I was okay. So I broadened my stance. Right? This is often the first thing I do, just go into star legs, wide legs. And I began turning side to side, doing some gentle yoga. And I listened to them. Any number of people could have looked at this group and been truly terrified. They could have seen demons. They were strong. They were dark. They were ready to be angry. And darkness to the skin evokes fear in plenty of people with lighter skin. That itself is part of the seeing. Because when I stayed with what I felt, I swear I impacted them. I remember one of them going to another, "Hey man, I think they're scared of us. You think they're scared of us? I do. Oh man, we're fine. We got this. We got this. They're scared of us." But they were talking like boys. They were talking like boys who wanted to go home and play a computer game. And I held space for them to be that because I saw through the lens of the spirit that I initially felt. I felt the presence of something that was kind. I stayed with that presence, and then it created space for them to be that kindness in the real world. I got ahead of it. Not much else happened. I prayed for them that they not fight whoever they were talking about. They were clearly talking about fighting others. But they talked about it in this way that I will never forget. Because how many that we know of as gang members in my country are like this at heart? They're just boys. They're just boys trying to protect themselves. And they work themselves into a reverie, and when the wrong person sees them in the wrong moment, they get a snapshot. They get a sliver that looks like a demon. And once they see a demon, they think they can kill that person. But if they'd known how to see the boy with care, that's what they would have seen. And soon, the right to change this is going to be taken away from us. We will slowly but surely be witnessed by divine eyes. And it has to happen slowly. It has to happen slowly. And in the process of it happening slowly, you are being invited to be seen earlier. The simple way is the key ring. The key ring is see me. That's what it's doing. It's helping you align your mind, your body, and your spirit. But when you align your mind, your body, and your spirit, energy gathers and comes together. You're no longer contradicting yourself on all these three planes. Now you're uniting yourself. So there's more energy present. Whoosh, you become brighter. You're saying, see me. You're raising your torch a little higher. And when you say, see me, there's still another step. I could do an hour-long practice designed around the key ring and be in bliss and make a stupid choice and plummet. Plummet. You still got to maintain it. You got to make choices in harmony with the divine presence you create in this way. And as you do that, you are saying, see me. You're saying, see me first to Thoth. You're saying, see me. And you know what he's going to say? You're not ready yet. But I'll give you a little breath out of the corner of my eye. And if you do it again tomorrow, maybe I'll stay this much longer. Over the course of the next 10 years, this is going to unite on a level that we know of as revelation. The truth beneath all of the big stories will be told by what we know through what we see. People will appear increasingly, and this is going to happen over the course of the next 10 years. Public figures that you've known in one way will expose themselves. From entertainers to politicians to religious leaders. They will expose themselves inadvertently. They won't be able to help it because the witnessing will increasingly center in on them and draw out the truth of who they are. Lies will not be capable of withstanding this kind of vision. Lies will not be capable of withstanding this kind of vision. The power, the power we have to lie will not be able to withstand this. It's awesome. It's awesome. I learned this over 20 years ago. It was the most crucial lesson 25 years ago. It was the most crucial lesson. I returned from a trip into the atmosphere of psychic reality. And I remember being blown away. Literally, who I'd been was blown away. And as I came back into consciousness, I just reminded myself, don't think you can hide. Don't think you can hide. Be totally transparent. Don't imagine that anything is a secret. It's not that everyone pays attention, but just live as if you are seen. Because some beings can see everything about you. And in the process of committing to this truth, I stopped arguing to try to control people's minds. I stopped arguing to try to frame what people thought of as me. I stopped trying to, say, this is me, this is me, this is me. And I started this commitment, like when I'm down, I'm going to be down. I don't know if you noticed, for the past 3 weeks, I've been going through trauma cycles. Now I'm coming out of it. Last week I was coming out of it. Now I'm really, I'm like stepping over the edge of the pit. Feels great. And I've gotten some incredible feedback from many of you who are humbled, inspired by me being real. I've also lost some folks. Some folks didn't want me to be weak like this. Some folks wanted me to be something else. It's a little sad. Viewership goes down. It's an ebb and flow. But goodness, it's liberating to know that there's nothing. I'm not trying to control it. I'm here. When I'm down, I'm going to be down. When I'm scared, I'm going to be scared. And in the act of being present with these feelings, I come through it much more quickly, much more gracefully, and I end up healthier and stronger than I was before. I have resolved so many major issues over the past 3 weeks. We lose our truth. We lose our power when we try to invoke and assert a false narrative about what we are. And in between are many things that people wouldn't think of as false, but you are essentially trying to, you've heard lipstick on a pig. You're trying to dress things up. You're trying to reframe things, spin reality out of context, out of harmony with the truth. When you just trust the truth and you let yourself fall apart and then you move through it because you keep praying, you don't let go of agency, but you let go of trying to hide and pretend and convince people to believe in you as powerful when you're not. And you do this because you trust that there are plenty of beings in the world that can see you honestly anyway. People walk into the room and they're scared. I know they're scared every single time. They want me to believe in this. I know you're there. I know. That's why it's great to work on the internet. It's exhausting being present with human beings all the time. I have friends who I can say, hey, what's up? And they'll smirk at me and be like, dude, cut it out. Yeah, I feel down. Be down. Act as if this is already true. And as you do, you commit to uniting your mind, your body, and your spirit and saying, hey, see me. Ryan, you got it. I have to tell you, this is just how I deal with it. I connect with others all the time. Sometimes I get names, sometimes I get faces. It happens constantly. I rarely stay in contact. I just rarely, I heard this recently. It's not that I'm saying no, it's that I'm saying a deeper yes. I have a yes that I'm saying all the time. And I'm only going to keep saying yes to that which keeps me in tune with Thoth. Now, Thoth actually invites me to stay with Mary Magdalene, or I have these basics that I stay with, it's not broad. Every once in a while that expands to another being that I can tell they're in tune with each other and the earth and this rainbow. I don't mean to be, this is how I do it. Don't get too distracted, because a lot of beings invoke a ton of psychic power. They do it on the back of attention they get in another way. They're meeting need for a wide range of folks. They're serving to express a range of feelings that many people have. They're the figurehead for that. Never mistake this for being evolved. Somebody is going to be the figurehead for everything. The most hateful people in the world, the most hateful demagogues and dictators in the world, were simply figureheads for the pain and fear of the people that they represented. That is not spiritually evolved, but it can be very psychically powerful. So a lot of folks gain a certain range of psychic power by being the representative for a wide range of feeling for other people. So there's a difference. They're like the carnivore of a herd. It's kind of dark, really, but that's how it works. They're like the carnivore of a herd, but they're just a representative of that herd. They are no more evolved than the whole herd. They will get your attention, and they will want your attention, and they essentially want you just for that, just for attention. Always check. If you don't know how to check, close your eyes and don't let anyone look at you, or say no. But check. Check your heart. Do the key ring. See if they're still there. If they're gone, bye-bye. It works. It works. I love you people. I went over. I'm going to switch over to, I didn't think I had the energy to do this at all, and I did. Let's be with our hearts before we leave, and then I'm going to switch over to the sanctuary. Wow, my heart's there more without my hands than with it. That's almost never true. Yesterday, I felt my heart open on a level I never remember doing this. It lasted for 20 minutes. I knew it was changing me really deeply. I'm excited. When Thoth sees me, he sees right to my heart. And he took me to a next level as he encouraged me, invited me to emphasize this today. Let yourself be seen. It begins in your heart. It flushes all your pain, brings you here, liberates you to live your best life. I invite you to do this every day and every moment that you need to.